Feel free to call out any questions. We're going to have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, but okay, the video is being recorded. Feel free to ask whenever you have a specific point question. So we're going to start the theme I've already presented, and we're going to talk today about the Brazilian culture and sort of formation of the Brazilian language identity. So first of all, what is a language identity? Well, what is a linguistic or language identity? So this definition that I put over here, it's caught from a book from Ninja Patale. She's an Indian linguistic professor, and I'll link you to everyone the study link if you guys want to read about it. But she defines linguistic identity as a person's identification as a speaker of one or more languages. That identity is offered. Oh my God, I'm so nervous. Okay. That identity is offered an important part of our identity and individuals and speaking groups. It allows you to consider yourself belonging to a particular community that is a speaker of your natural language. So why do Brazilians have such a different language identity than other countries that speak the same language as them, in this case, Portuguese? People often ask us, like, do you speak Brazilian? And we say, no, like, we speak Portuguese. But the truth is that we talk many different languages, the language that is very different from other Portuguese or Lusophonic, as it's the term for countries that speak Portuguese. And what is the reason why people have such a different language identity than the other countries? Why do we have this such specific Brazilian identity of linguistics? So we're going to talk through the elements that make this such a different language from the others spoken in countries such as Mozambique, Angola, and Portugal, and other countries in Africa. So first of all, we got to remember what identity factors form the main factors that altered the language of Portuguese in Brazil. So we have, first of all, language roots, which is the basic formation, which is the basic ingredients of the language identity. Also history, how did these language roots develop? And also how did they mix with other cultures in the country? So we're going to start. With the language roots, which trace back to the European Portuguese. Portugal was the colonizer of Brazil, so the European Portuguese was the basic ingredient, the first element that what constituted the Brazilian Portuguese, and it traces back to the Latin Romance language family, which is this gigantic family of languages that originated in Europe, in the Roman Empire, and it has such languages, cousin languages, like to tell, Portuguese, Spanish, French, Italian, Romanian, also Catalan, many languages that originated from Latin. So that's the basic brick of the construction of the language. Here is how the Latin language is spread all over Europe, and I would like to point out this specific, I don't know if you guys are able to see where I'm going right now, but this is called the Iberian Peninsula, and it's where located the territories of Portugal and Spain, and you can see that the main language spoken there are Catalan, Spanish, Historian, Galician, and Portuguese. But we're going to talk specifically about Galician and Portuguese, which is also called the Galego-Portuguese family, that was responsible for being the major language spoken in Portugal. But also, it's important to know that besides the spread of Latin around Europe, there were also other factors that affected the original Portuguese spoken in Portugal. And one of those factors is the Arab occupation. Well, the Arabs from North Africa and Middle East conquered the Iberian Peninsula and formed the Umayyad Caliphate from the 8th to the 11th century, they fully dominated the Iberian Peninsula. And of course, their language influence was the Old Arabic, not the Arabic we speak today, but it had lots of similarities to what is spoken now on Maghreb or Levante, those regions of Middle East and Africa, North Africa. And here you can see how big the Umayyad Caliphate was, and well, it basically reached the whole north of Africa, the Middle East, a little bit of Asia, and the Iberian Peninsula, where is located Portugal. And well, that influence lasted for over 5 centuries, left linguistic influences. So especially around food and daily talk, words. So Arabic had a big influence in what the language of Portuguese was spoken during the Umayyad Caliphate, because from the local people spoke Portuguese, but they were dominated by Arabs, and so there was a fusion of languages there. So the first examples we have here are daily words such as arroz, which has basically the same pronunciation in Arabic and Portuguese. Fulano, it's a word used to refer to somebody, which you don't specifically know the name or don't want to say the name. And it basically means, fulan means someone in Arabic. So that's the origin of the word in Portuguese. Also, alecrim, which is rosemary, was also came from the Arabic alecrim. And orange, which in Portuguese we say laranja, came from the Arabic influence of naranj, which also had an impact in Spanish, which is, in Spanish we call orange naranja. And it also comes everything from the 5 centuries of Arabic domination in the Iberian Peninsula. Also, we have, after all this period of formation of the European Portuguese, we have the big navigations, which began with the colonization, which was the start of the colonization history of Portugal, the colonization history of Portugal. They first arrived in Brazil, their first colony in America, in April 22nd of the beginning of the 16th century. And Brazil was Portugal's colony. So we had all that background of languages from Arabic and Latin that came from the Europeans. And of course, the official language of the colony was Portuguese, which it's not the language that is spoken today on Portugal. It was the Galego Portuguese, which is a mix of Galician and Portuguese, but with more old vocabulary than it is spoken today. And also during the colonization period, we had a mix of very different and unique ethnical groups in Brazil. And Brazil is one of the most diverse racial and culturally countries in the world. And we're going to analyze the factors that made that possible, that diversity, those ethnic groups so different, and also evaluate those impacts on the language spoken today in Brazil. So first of all, we've got to understand that there are 3 types of miscegenation in Brazil: primary, secondary, and neo. We're gonna go step by step because those are in chronological order. So first of all, we have the primary miscegenation, which began in the 16th century. And it was, of course, basically native people, which were already here when Portugal arrived. The Africans were brought here because slavery was the basic of Brazil's economy, and everything depended on the slaves brought back from Africa. And of course, the Portuguese, which here is Cristiano Ronaldo, which wasn't necessarily him, but the Portuguese colonizers that arrived in Brazil. Well, the European origin I already spoken about. So we had Gallico Portuguese, Galician and Portuguese, plus the Latin Roman languages and the Arabic background influences from the Umayyad Caliphate. Now, the native origin, we can see as in this map, there are many different groups of native people in Brazil, and there are over 200 dialects spoken today. And there might have been more languages spoken back in those days of the colonization, but for now it's over 200 dialects, which is a lot. And we also have such different people in Brazil from the native groups, but the main, the ones who had the most impact during the colonization period, the ones who had more contact were the East Coast peoples. Here we can see Tupiniquins, Tupinambás in the map, those in red, those in orange and green. They had the first contact with the colonizers as they arrived from the coast. And also the inner area peoples had later contact with the bandeirantes, which were expeditions to discover the middle of Brazil. They were entering the country and discovering the new areas and also having contact with the natives that were in those areas. So they were the main direct impacts and first impacts that the first contacts actually that the colonizers had with Brazilian people. So the main languages that were spoken through these groups were Tupiniquim, Tupinambá, and Tupi-Guarani. Tupi-Guarani is a big language family that's spoken also in Bolivia, Argentina, and Paraguay. And it covers most part of the language groups of native people in Brazil. Here we have some words that show us how much impact the native languages had in our language, and it shows up to these days as they are part of our language identity. Portugal, other countries in Africa that speak Portuguese, they don't have these words because they are based on the Brazilian miscegenation, that what happened here with our natives. So we have certain words for chicken pox, blood hawk, the capivara came from the Tupi-Guarani word capivara, which is an animal. We have the word that defines people from Rio de Janeiro, which is carioca. We also have many local foods that were named after, that have their names in the native language roots, such as caju, mandioca, those examples are in the slide. And also here I put a character that is really a part of the Brazilian culture. It's from a comic book called Monica's Gang. And this character is the indigenous one from the group, and his name is Papa Capim. And that word comes from, that name of the character comes from the name of a bird, which is Papa Capim capuchinho. It is a Brazilian native bird from Pará, which is a state. Next off, we have the African origin, which I also already said that came back from Africa. They were brought as slaves here to America, and when I mean America, I mean South America. And we have the influence from people that were brought from different countries over there, especially countries like Mozambique, Angola, Benin, and Guinea-Bissau. So Mozambique is right on the east coast, while Angola, Benin, and Guinea-Bissau were countries in this case, located in the west coast of Africa. They were colonized by Portugal at some point. Some of them still have Portuguese as their their official language. But the native language spoken in those African countries, such as Yoruba, Crioulo, Kimbundu, and Xangana, also known as Songa, were spoken in those countries. They had a big influence in our Brazilian culture and Brazilian language identity because, well, there were so many Africans brought to Brazil, and they all spoke in their native languages, and they were a part of the society. They had their contributions to our culture, to our identity. So we have so many words that come directly from this language spoken by the Africans. And mostly it's words related to food, religion, such as voodoo and macumba, which are religions practiced in Brazil that can trace back to the African country. And also everyday words that people use, such as everyday. I'm going to show you some examples. But those vocabularies, such food, everyday words, religion, they were all looked with the bad eyes because of racism, and the colonizers were all looked at as being better and being being better in general. Africans. So every word that came from those vocabularies, those dialects, they were looked with bad eyes. And it had this most influence, those group of words had the most influence in the Northeast region, which is this part from the map in red, because it's also used around the country as a whole, but it had more impact in our region specifically because the sugar factories were located in our region, and well, all the work was done by the slaves, so the concentration of African slaves was bigger in that region, so that's why it had the most impact there. Here are some words that came from the African dialects, mostly Yoruba. So Jiló, Acarajé, Quiabo, they are all words for food. We also have daily words such as cafuné and caatinga, which actually are used here for, we say, funny things such as bunda, which we use as caatinga, which is supposed to be some smelly thing. So those daily words, they all brought from their own cultures, and we use it every day, basically. Well, those were the first miscegenations that Brazil had, but centuries later, we had another wave of immigration, which caused a secondary miscegenation in the 19th and 20th century, especially of immigrants from Italy, Japan, Germany, Syria, Lebanon, and Spain. I put this one bigger because they were the biggest influences. They came in more numbers, and well, they haven't interfered much, those languages such as Italian, Japanese, German, they haven't interfered much in the general language identity in Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, but the linguistic variations are located in specific areas. And here we have some examples of where the immigrants arrived. They stayed in a group in a certain area, and that area was affected by their culture, by their language, and some little changes were made, but it's very located. It's not something that is the same in the whole country, because those immigrations didn't happen in the whole country. So we have some examples here, such as pastel, which is in Brazilian Portuguese. In general, it is used to describe something salt and fried, but it's the word that the Spanish speakers use to describe a cake. So cake in Spanish, it's pastel. And we have some regions that stopped saying bolo, which is the Brazilian word, Portuguese word for cake, and they started using the Spanish word for cake. That happened in the state of Espírito Santo, in a really Spanish immigration area. And also an expression called terra roxa, which means purple earth, purple dirt. That expression really centered itself on the South region, because there were so many Italian immigrants there that when they saw the red dirt, they would say it in Italian, so it's terra rossa. But it sounds, rosa is red in Italian, but it sounds like purple in Portuguese. So it kind of became a thing as an expression for the southeast regions when you see something like a red dirt on the ground, which is very common there, you say it's a purple dirt because of the double meaning of the word that seems so likely, so close in Italian and Portuguese, but they were completely different meanings, completely different colors. So those are examples of the secondary miscegenation that had impact in the linguistics. And after that, after the secondary miscegenation, we had the Neovisiting Nation, which I don't mean neo from Matrix. It happens in the 21st century, which means it's happening right here and right now. The countries that combine in this miscegenation are especially Bolivia, Venezuela, and Russia. Well, those are different, completely different countries, completely different continents in the case of Russia, and they stay in different areas in Brazil. They came from different areas and they stay in different regions of the country. So their impact is not something that is general, just like the other, I said, in the secondary miscegenation. They are very specific and located groups of immigrants. So we have the Bolivian population, especially in the Middle West and Southeast regions of Brazil. The Venezuelan population often comes to the North and Northeast regions, which are the regions that are closer to Venezuela. And the Russian population is really found in the south of Brazil, especially the southeast state, which is Rio Grande do Sul. So there are many Russian immigrants there, but as it's really new, everything is happening from 20 years back to now. It haven't impacted the Brazilian language identity yet. It might happen in the future, depending on whether there are more immigrants or less immigrants, or the immigrants spread. But there haven't been any modifications yet on the language for now. So, continuing with the new miscegenation, we have the new cyber miscegenation, which comes from, well, not phones, which come from globalization, especially from the United States. With internet, we connect with people all around the world. We're talking from different countries, from different places, from different cultures, and especially we communicate in English. So the vocabulary that we are often exposed to is English, and we are often introduced to new terms and internet vocabulary, and of course that as well, everyone basically has internet these days. Not everyone, but lots of people have this access in Brazil. So it's inevitable that this neo-cyber miscegenation, this colonization of English in the internet, results of the globalization have a direct impact on our vocabulary. So we are exposed to new words and we adapt that to our language identity. So it's mostly the most impact that the English language has on Brazilian language identity and our dictionary, because we have many words in English in our dictionary right now. It's mostly because of words such as PowerPoint, bullying, hack, logging, and online, which are new terms that didn't exist 30 years ago, and they came to us through internet. So that is how that is magnificent, because we don't even need to have a direct contact, like person to person, like happened with the other immigrants, like happened with the other cultures. We can, like, a language can suffer an impact from other countries, from other people, from other languages, just through a screen, just through a phone. Like people that have never left Brazil can have access to all these new words and adapt that to their language. So of course, Brazil wasn't out of the play, and Brazilian Portuguese has suffered an impact of the internet vocabulary. And well, my final considerations are that every language, every country has their own tracings, their own history, and everything combines to what Brazilian Portuguese has been up to these days, what it has suffered from the 8th century to these days, words that were brought up together from different continents, from different cultures, from different everything, that combines such exquisite language identity that is still happening, changes on it, as we can see, the recent changes of English and a possible change for the new immigrants that are coming to Brazil. So every language identity is so fluid and passive of change. And it doesn't have to be even a big change, something that impacts so much. It doesn't have to be a bunch of boats coming from another country to colonize Brazil anymore. Like, we are suffering these changes and diversifying our language, even through contact throughout a screen. And I feel like that's amazing, and that is worth knowing and sharing with everyone. So that's the presentation. Thank you very much.